Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Noel. I'm a multimedia journalist, Caribbean correspondent, and of course, a proud Caribbean American. And as we wrap up Caribbean American Heritage Month, I'm so excited to be here tonight hosting a conversation for Tropicalfete's Authors Connecting series. And tonight, I get the pleasure of speaking with Nandi Jacob, the author, playwright, and journalist, and we're going to be talking about her book, True Nanny. We're going to be talking about her book, True Nanny Diaries. And so I would like you all to just settle in. We're going to take a couple of minutes to get some more people in this live, in the show, the stragglers to come on in. And we're going to have her come on screen in just a moment. So if you guys just sit tight, make sure if you have comments or questions that you are throwing those in the chat so that we can ask while we are going through this conversation. We're going to hear some great excerpts from the book and also talk about why this story is not just an important story that we talk about tonight, but a story that we keep going, keep the conversation going on and on, because this story, although fictional, deals with a lot of real world issues facing Caribbean immigrants in America. So I'd like to introduce our author tonight of True Nanny Diaries, Miss Nandi Jacob. So everyone, wherever you're seated right now, give a little hand claps for Miss Nandi Jacob. Welcome, welcome to the Authors Connecting series. So happy to see you this evening.
I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm so glad you joined us. This is literally, I'm so sad this month has gone by so fast. Caribbean American Heritage Month is down to the wire. And we definitely had to change how we celebrate this month, but the messages are no less important. So before we get into your book, True Nanny Diaries, I just want to know, how are you doing now in these unprecedented times? You know, you're a playwright, you're a journalist, you're an author. So your world revolves around the creative arts and the creative space. So I get the sense that just like everyone else, you've been heavily impacted by COVID, but I want to get a sense of specifically, how has your work, your day-to-day work, your plays, your books, how has that been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, Melissa, the impact has been great. First, of course, I must mention, I've lost people due to COVID, and one being a great supporter of my work, which is Mr. Conrad from Conrad's Bakery. So even from that point, he was a great supporter of the arts.
Yes, and what a staple in Brooklyn's Caribbean community.
Right. So even from the point of view of, losing someone so dynamic and so supportive, that has been rough. Now, in terms of the work, I'm almost at this moment where I'm almost, sort of like questioning your existence because everything that I do basically has to do with gathering people. There's nothing I love more than to have an audience of people just looking at some work or having a discussion or, I've had some really good sort of gatherings in the past where we've had like Mighty Sparrow in conversation and Flago and Janet in conversation and David Moore in conversation, so many wonderful showcases of people, not just my work, but just people in the community. But then now we can't gather anymore. So what do I do? What does the work actually mean? And almost as though it wasn't ever important, because even in the opening, like the last thing that they were going to allow is public gatherings for entertainment. That was the bottom of the tier. Entertainment is last. And then you have even Broadway announcing today that they're not even coming back until 2021. And so many shows are going to be closing. And so, it's a rough time. What do I do next? I don't know. Some people are predicting it's going to be 3 years after vaccine before people feel comfortable with coming together again. So, yeah.
I think it's the kind of thing that every day we're learning a little bit more. We have to play certain things by ear. But what do you think you, in terms of being innovative to kind of stay connected with this community, right? You talked about the community that would gather for, whether it be one of your plays or a book or just bringing people together. What innovative ways have you found to stay connected with people during this time?
Well, I haven't done anything in terms of live streams. I've attended a few events, but I haven't done any. This is actually my first thing that I'm participating. Yeah, there you go, Melissa. I'm participating in because it doesn't feel the same to me. And funny enough, recently I made a little bit of a transition or reach where I have a web series called Green Card, A Love Story that I started, having that on YouTube. And that was sort of a little bit different because I'm so used to that energy that you get from an audience. But one of the things I have been playing around with my mind is to have a play, like something like Flambeau, something like big and colorful, and just basically put it up in the park next year, just ad hoc in, maybe just as a series or something, and whoever shows up. So I've been thinking about, something like that, pop up, because I cannot, it's the only thing that I've ever felt closely connected to is theater. And I cannot do anything if I'm not doing that. So surely I'll have to dig into some bag, you look at to see what other artists are doing to bridge the gap, and I'm thinking, little pop-up theater in the park next spring sounds about right.
That sounds good to me. And I'd love to see Flambeau again. And Green Card, A Love Story. I know that's something that we started to see some of the episodes online. I would love to see that in person. So
So we can just show up in the park and just pitch our blankets and have a good time.
Listen, Caribbean people, any excuse to have a line, we're going to do it. And if we get some good theater at the same time and a good story, that's what we're here for.
Right. It's interesting. Even though I said Broadway is not coming back until next year, I'm not taking my cue from Broadway. I'm looking to see what's going to happen around Labor Day, not particularly the event, but to see what other, other artists are going to be right.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody's waiting to see what somebody else is doing. So I don't know if anything's going to actually get done. But
we're seeing things and the innovation come in and, people doing things. But I think that's a good place in mind to say, okay, Labor Day, you kind of get a sense, but like you said, not waiting on anyone in particular to do something. Right. That flow going. So now let's get into your book, The True Nanny Diaries, which is a fictional story, but definitely touches on some real issues that we see faced by Caribbean immigrants and just immigrants in general who come to the U.S. and work as domestic workers. So first, I want to give our audience a little synopsis of the story before I jump into some of the questions that I have. So, this is the story of Valdi West, who left Trinidad and Tobago to come to the U.S. and study at Columbia University on a scholarship. However, once she got here and reality set in, one of the things that she had to do was babysit or become a nanny to survive. And that's a typical story of so many people that come to the United States and are trying to live that American dream, but she had to do this babysitting to not only survive while she was trying to pursue this degree, but survive as an undocumented immigrant in America, which further complicates her story. So then what's so interesting about Valdi's story is that time waits for no man, and we see in this story that 20 years quickly passes her by, and unfortunately, those dreams that she came into the U.S. with have very much so changed. We see her throughout this story, and we meet some of the other women that are along for this journey with her in the same way. They are domestic workers. They are trying their best to figure out what that dream is. And we start to see those complications that come with that. Before we get more into this, I'd like to know what inspired you to write True Nanny Diaries. Was there a personal connection to this? Was this I know oftentimes as Caribbean people, there might have been a family story or family connection, but what inspired this story?
Okay, actually, it was very, very personal. So I lived in Toronto for a long time. I lived in Toronto, and I was a journalist. I was doing a lot of stuff in Toronto. So then I had a baby, and I had to leave. Just personal circumstances. I decided to come closer to my relatives in the United States, and also and go back to school as well. So that was going well, and so forth. Then I needed to get a job where I could like go to school and then work. And anyway, so someone said to me, hey, there are jobs on Craigslist. And I'm like, on Craigslist? What is Craigslist? So anyway, I went, and then I ended up getting a job as a babysitter. So there was that. So that was the piece, right? And I'm going to school. So I was complaining to one of my professors one day because of the particular situation I was in, and she said, Nandi, you're in the trenches and you can write. Why don't you write about it? People pay for that kind of ethnographical research. That was my British lit professor, Dr. Susan English. Dr. Susan English. I don't think I got it right. But anyway, she was my British lit professor. So I started like making notes, not thinking I was like writing a book. I was just, and then all of a sudden, one day, this character emerged, Valdi, and took the story in a whole new direction. And then other characters started appearing, and I was like more and more surprised. And then I'm realizing, well, maybe I am writing a book, and that's how it started. Right. So it was personal. Yeah, it was personal, and I made friends. I didn't do it for very long. I think it was about a year and a half. But I made so many friends on the playground. There were so many things that I observed that I thought, that there were stories all around me, basically, and just like little things. Like I would see, like sometimes my friends, we would be just hanging on the ground, actually on the grounds of Columbia, right near that statue, and then a parent would come in, and then somebody would say, "Hey, there's Matthew's father," and then that person will jump up and start engaging Matthew with a ball. It's very funny, So they were just
dynamic.
There was always this duality. Like there was always a performance, and one of the part of the performance is that you really enjoyed what you were doing. I'm not saying that there weren't people who did, but the one lady who I thought like really enjoyed her job. One day we had a play date together, and when she spilled out to me, she's actually, her appearance, her essence is that Madame Lucian character in the book.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a character that stands out right away. Like Madame
Lucian
cannot, that personality, how she is, her enjoying kinds of things. Yes.
Yeah, she was always so happy. And I was like, wow, you really, like, she really enjoyed her job. And I'm like, wow, and I'm here complaining all the way. And then the one day when she actually explained to me, how it's not, the story in the book is not her story.
Right, got it.
But the feel, tone, the mood, the feel of it is like all her, So yeah, so it was personal. It was personal. And then realizing, the other thing that happened around the time was that the Nanny Diaries came out.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the Nanny Diaries came out, and I'm thinking these were two young white women babysitting to get a little extra cash, and I'm saying they have choice. There's choice there.
Right.
The woman I'm with, the woman I'm with, there's the element of choice is totally removed. This is a have to do this. And the woman in her book, that's not the woman the true women who are doing this work that I've met. So that's why the true Nanny Diaries, that's why I came in. Funny enough, I met the authors at the Brooklyn Book Festival one year, and they had read the book and they wanted to take they were so famous and they wanted to take a picture with me and everything, because they said that when they read my book, the one, I think her name is Emma, she cried because I guess maybe in some way they thought they didn't quite get it right, because it just wasn't the real story about the real woman. But that's the book that got the fame,
Right, right. So would you say, so what I'm getting from that, and, often what we see with that kind of thing is your story really presented a representation of women who are often invisible, in a sense. And kind of, they're there and you work for, you might work for families or do different things, but you often kind of fall into this invisible category. And you were telling their stories. And when we talk about representation matters, I think this is a clear example of that, because it's not for you writing your book, then these specific stories, right? Women who do not have a choice in this, where this is literally how you are surviving and how you're able to maybe stay in this country, then that's a completely different story.
Right. Yeah. Quite so. And funny, there was a point at which I actually got an agent, Serendipity, Regina Brooks, and she submitted my book to several major publishers. And what came back at the time is, in this publishing world, for everybody who, I can't remember, that person who acquires books, I can't remember what they're called, that the next book could be your last, because it was so, they saw an edge in terms of that work. And they talked about the book staying with them for so long, but the problem that they had with the book, all of them, it was repeated, was that they couldn't understand why she was so angry. So the suggestion was that I clean her up. That's the main character, why Valdi was so angry. So the suggestion was that I clean up Valdi, I make her more palatable to people, and and then they're going to take another look, which I never did. I never did do that. So again, it's representation.
Right. So did you feel, so with never doing that, was that your way of saying, hey, I'm not going to water down this very real, even though, again, as we know, it's a fictional story, but I'm not going to water down this very real occurrence or real feelings that I have seen in my own experiences to fit someone else's narrative, or, as you said, make it more palatable?
Well, I wish I could be so noble as to say that was the reason, but actually I tried to do it. I sat there and I have her and I'm putting sticky notes all over, trying to figure out what I could take out, and then also they didn't like the way the white woman, were portrayed, right? And I tried, and I'm like why? Because it didn't feel natural. I knew I was going to ruin it. I knew it wasn't going to come out right, and I just left it. So again, this idea of notions of representation, it's so very important. And one of the things, maybe I would have been rich and famous, but I take a lot of solace in the women that I've met over the years. A woman who met me in a book festival, and she was telling me about having breast cancer, Trinidadian woman, having breast cancer and can't get time off. You understand? So if you take this time off to get your chemotherapy or whatever you need, then you lose your job. And there's so many women.
These are real issues women are facing who work as domestic workers in different aspects, day in, day out. And so those are very real problems that, and I, from what I'm getting, you wanted to stick to that authenticity of the original narrative that you wrote.
That came through me, because as I say, I didn't write it. It just came through me. There's another woman. Her name is Susan. She's also on my Facebook. We became Facebook friends. And she wrote a review on Amazon, which really touched me. And she said that the day she read the Nanny Diaries, that's the last year she babysat, because it moved her to a place where, you start to take inventory and check yourself.
Right.
So I think that the book got to the people that the book was meant to represent and the community, right? It's also been, it's found its way straight through academia. So I think there's a book that's coming out. I put out the name of it. Hold on, I'll tell you. By Dr. Tracy Walters, called, that's coming out sometime this year. Not Your Mother's Mommy, the representation of domestic workers in transatlantic fiction. And that's going to be published in the fall of 2020. And the True Nanny Diaries is a chapter in this book. So it's found its way in that sort of a scholarship, women's literature, Caribbean literature, African American literature, in that sort of a way. So, I think that having an authentic voice is the reason why that can happen, as opposed to
and have the reach that you intended for it to have.
Right.
As you said, even though it may not necessarily mean that you're rich and famous, but it means that you made the impact,
right,
and made that difference. So what I'd like to do, because we're talking about the book, I have all the questions around it, but I think what would be important for people, especially people who haven't read the book yet, haven't had the pleasure, and we hope that, after tonight's interview, if you have not read True Nanny Diaries, you need to get your copy, whether it's, I love hardback, so I had to order mine. So I could actually physically hold it, but get it on your Kindle, get it however you can. But we'd like to, if you will indulge us, to have you read an excerpt from the book that specifically brings us into Valdi's story and her relationship with some of the other women, because I think that is really where we get the essence of what these women are experiencing as they do this work in New York City.
Okay. Funny, this is actually not, this book here is not my book. I borrowed it from someone, so my book has all the little markings and so forth.
Exactly, your markings and whatnot. But listen, we're gonna give you the minute or two to find. We know that you're on something to find it. But while you are doing that, if what I want to know, so we had Keishelle Williams in the comments. She says, Dr. Susan Fisher.
Dr. Susan Fisher. Thank you, Keishelle.
That was her professor too.
Yes, and she was, oh my gosh, she was such a great, as I said, she was at the root of all this. Because I said Dr. Susan English, and I said, wait, that doesn't I didn't say that right. Yeah. Okay, well, that's great.
We appreciate that connection, and Keishelle, we appreciate you very much. And we thank you for sharing the flyer for this evening's programming and for joining us. We appreciate you so much. If there is anyone who's watching right now and you have questions for Nandi Jacob, Ashley's finding which section she's going to read to us, which excerpt, please drop it in the comments. We want to make sure that your questions are being answered. We're going to also delve into some of the issues that face domestic workers that this book touches on, some of these real life issues and how that's played into our current situation. And we also have another special guest who's going to be joining us to talk about how this book, although a work of fiction, has really played into the real world legislation that has been pushed and continues to be pushed for domestic workers, which I think is really an important part of our conversation.
Okay, so one of the things that I enjoyed most about this book that came through me, right, the True Nanny Diaries,
I like that.
Is that
the
book that came through me is that it wasn't only about the work; it was also about the play and about the community the women were able to create just by mere fact of coming together and hanging and all that stuff. So Madame Lucian, which is the elder of all of them, of the four women, she had a second job where she would sell bread from her apartment in Flatbush. So every Friday, the girls would go and help Madame Lucian knead flour and sell bread from this apartment. Because immigrants, you do what you have to do, right? Because Madame Lucian thought that she was building a house in Trinidad. So I'll just read a little bit about that. Just the woman. Okay, so we never rushed anything when we made bread by Madame Lucian. She said the oomph that surrounds dough makers determines the final outcome of the bread. That's why I didn't go around her during the dark days of my unemployment. I had carried bad oomph. The one day I went around to assist, the bread emerged from the oven, resembling an old-time baking stone. For the sake of the bread, I wanted to forget how pissed I was about bringing the flour up the stairs, getting the stain on my clothes, and being by Madame Lucian at all. When I could be home getting ready for the big day. I sat at Madame Lucian's kitchen table on my chair. Each of the 4 chairs had evolved into Valdi's chair, Monica's chair, Ava's chair, and Madame Lucian's chair. And whether we were working or linemen, we always sat in the same seats. Ava facing the short wall, me facing Ava with my back to the fridge, Madame Lucian facing the long wall, and Monica facing Madame Lucian with her back to the kitchen counter. At first, first, Madame Lucian had refused to allow me to go to her place and start the prep before she arrived. I told her that if I could not go to her house early and leave early, I wouldn't be able to help out today. Ava said to count her out because she had to study for midterms. Monica was useless as she had been sniffling all day. That's when Madame Lucian handed me the keys, even though I was begging her in my mind for this one Friday night free. Not that our help was critical to her operation, as Madame Lucian had single-handedly baked and sold bread from her apartment for years before she met any of us, even Monica. She was more spoiled by having our company than the actual help the company provided. I got a long lecture about the actual list of things I could do and a much longer list of things I could not touch. The cibor she had left hanging over the radiator to dry was a big no-no. She had also warned me to take my time with the preparations. Do not put any hurry energy into my bread, she said. I anchored my elbows like an upside-down V, dropped my chin between my palms, and inhaled the lavender scent from the plant that Madame Lucian kept on the kitchen table. We teased her that lavender was her drug of choice. In the living room, its light floral scent exuded from satin sachets tucked under the couch cushions. In the bathroom, the scent came up from decorative purple soaps and tiny oil spots on the hand towels. In the kitchen, chemical lavender exploded from the freshly washed floor and the dried blue blossoms resting on the radiator cover. Madame Lucian herself was a walking lavender blossom because she put a few drops in the clothes dryer and would top that up with English lavender body mist after every shower. But I always enjoyed her lavender most by breathing over the blossoms of the plant. The scent sent my mind wandering along the edges of memories, half forgotten, before settling for the present and immediate, like being in my own apartment preparing for the big day ahead. Wrapping my hair and slathering warm mud on my face, then most delicious of all, I imagine associated with the literati who was sure to be at the gala. I wish I could go home now to look for the specific shoes to match the pantsuit. Back in the day, I never bought an outfit without shoes to match. I wondered if and how the suit would fit. It would be my first attempt in years to wear a size 9. I had fetched the suit from an old chest after my boss asked why I always wore such huge, ill-fitting garments. She was the one who suggested I was probably a size 9 under my unsightly floral print. She wondered aloud what shape size 9 I was. Right? So that's just her, Vadi sitting at Madame Lucian. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I loved about Madame Lucian's character is how she was that force, that friend that brought the whole crew together. In that space for them to come on a Friday and to bake bread and to get together. And then I also loved, or what stuck with me a lot throughout the book was how, Valdi would often, that was kind of like an escape being there, among the ladies, kneading the dough, making the bread. And she would kind of drift in and out of, here's my present reality, but here's where I really want to be. And you would see how she was struggling back and forth with what she wanted versus what life was for her at that point in time. But I think it made that very real that, hey, these are the experiences I'm having, and this is what she's wrestling with. So I think that's what stuck out. So we have a question. This is a great question coming from Kishelle. And she says, Madame Lucian's character, yes, brought these women together, definitely. And that's what I loved about her. And she felt so larger than life and on every page. And so she says she's not going to spoil it for those who haven't read the book. Thank you. We're telling people, go and buy this book. Please purchase it. And that the ending stayed with her for days after she finished it. But she wants to know from you, did the woman who inspired Madame Lucian's character, did she ever read the book? And if so, what did she think about it? And think about, her inspiration or what inspired this character.
It was so funny that after this book came out, for a long time, I would go like maybe once a month or so, I would go back to the Columbia grounds because I was looking for her. And it so happened that she, as always happens, the boy she was taking care of grew up, and it took her like another year to find a job. So I would go back to the playground, go back because I wanted to, give her a copy of the book. And then one day I found her and, I was able to present her with the book and so forth. And then she organized for all the women to have a party at her house, right? And I went with books, and we had a great time, and we had wine, and we had like lots of food, and and I actually did a reading for them. So yeah, she was really appreciated of it. And the story about the house, as I said, it's like a lot of things. The story about, well, I don't want to spoil it, but
right, yeah, we're making sure that you see that. So this, and I'll reiterate that, Tropicalfete Inc. and why this was such an important, part of our Caribbean American Heritage Month celebration is to encourage people to not only read more, but to support and read Caribbean books by Caribbean authors.
Okay, yeah.
You're seeing Amazon and Barnes and Nobles at the bottom because of the, you can click directly from the links that are provided to authors like Nandi Jacob to support and to purchase books. So we want you to support our Caribbean authors and support these authentic Caribbean stories as well, as we've been talking about that authenticity of not watering down the characters or, how certain people are presented in it to make it more palatable to another group, but keeping it authentic to the Caribbean experience, which is something I know we can all appreciate. And so you said that the woman who inspired Madame Lucian, that she appreciated the book. Like, what was her response, her reaction when she
she started crying? Because the funny thing about it, the description of the woman, like the hair, like she really did have like this mane of just glorious hair, right? So I gave it to her, and I said, she said, well, she's not a reader. And I said, like, I really am asking, for you to read it. And then she said she started reading it, and then she couldn't put it down. And then she asked me if it was like, she very shyly asked me if this was her, because like even the happiness that she always had, and again, it struck me the day, I said there was one time we had a play date, just us, and the two kids that we were taking care of. And she started talking about the experiences in the home that she was with, and started crying. And I'm like thinking, oh my God, suppose there are cameras, and suppose this. But that sadness was so strange. And if you look at the book with this character, that the day that she got sad, everybody was shocked, because she was just always such a larger than life happy person.
Right, happy person, the person that brought everybody together.
Right. So the day the thing happened to her in the book, it was, like nobody knew what to do. It actually broke up the crew because she was the glue.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
and the bread making always felt like a metaphor throughout the book, because it wasn't, like the bread. Yes, but we got to know that it was Madame Lucian's personality and her demeanor that brought everyone together and made her that glue. And that bread was like one of the symbols that kept that crew together. So and that's why she's my favorite in the book. Thank you for that question. I love that, because when we talk about impact, right, that's why you kept it authentic to, a true authentic Caribbean story, for that kind of impact, to give voice and space to someone like Madame Lucian's character that's inspired by someone's true, real demeanor and story.
Yeah, because our stories are our stories, and our stories are important.
Exactly.
And they're important to us. And there must be a space where we are able to deposit our voice, tell our tales, where it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside world. This is about us, and I've always somehow, it seems as though, operated within that space, even if it's so funny. The other day, I was writing something, I can't remember what I was writing, but once again, I went to the Caribbean, that experience. And my daughter asked me, Mom, why do you always write about the Caribbean? And, at first I was like, oh, like I felt a little defeated in the moment. But then the understanding that that's the space I love, that's the space for some reason, because as you may have seen in my bio, that I was actually born in London, right? And I lived in Trinidad only 9 years out of my copious years. 9 out of my copious years. something about Trinidad and the culture, the mores, that has stuck with me so much that, the Caribbean is where I deposit my talents, where I draw from, where I give to, and there has to be a space for that, and there's a space for that when you think about you and Alton and people who are providing forums so that we can dance and we can sing and we can tell these tales. So trying to be authentic, working in that, it's hard sometimes. I'm not gonna lie,
but we have like such an intersection, me being someone born in New York City, but having the experience of spending formative years in Guyana and then being here in New York City, and that informing my worldview and that informing how I look at things, and that being the reason why I am so incredibly passionate about ensuring that there's representation in mainstream US news and that we are telling these stories, because if you're not the one in the space often, reminding people or doing the work, sometimes the stories just will not get told. So I do I relate directly to that. I always say I feel like I got the best of both worlds because I, had the experiences in both places. But I think it's critical that we continue to do that. So I applaud that. And I want to get, into the next question, which specifically has to do with the fact that the book touches on some major themes about, the migration and immigration process, the rights of domestic workers, or in some cases, the lack thereof when it comes to, what you have in terms of protections or sick leave or what you can and cannot do. And as we're looking at, currently what we're looking at right now with this global pandemic, I often have been thinking about our domestic workers, our agriculture workers who are kind of caught in a really weird space when your job really requires you to where is your sick leave or your stay at home, right? Those things don't necessarily apply. Why was it so important for you to include those specific themes in the story that have to do with, the migration process and, the fact that you highlighted that a lot of domestic workers are undocumented immigrants, and these are women for a lot of the time? Why were these themes so important? Because they were like overarching themes that we saw throughout the story.
The interesting thing is, right? Basically, for one thing, I've always been concerned. I feel as though from the Caribbean end that we have lost generations and we've lost community because of the women who left, right? So that's one. So the women left and they're here and they're taking care of the kids here. They're working, they're employed. And then for many people, their kids were back home with grandma or with auntie, and many kids suffer, because there's nothing, I don't want to make it as though, what should I say? There are kids that were in very abusive situations in the Caribbean because of the absence of the parents. I was one. So I guess maybe that's why, this has been like so important to me. So there's that part, the generations we lost, the generations that suffered, right? Then
term that is used in the work I've done a lot of reporting on is the barrel children.
The barrel children, yes.
Caribbean, right. And that's a lot of the reporting I did was similar to knowing these stories and wanting to be in a space where we could talk about some of the issues that stem from that is what sparked that within me. So I can understand, having that passion that I want to tell those stories.
Yeah, because for one, I had the best barrels, but I would have loved to be with my parents, you understand what I mean, as opposed to like an abusive aunt. So there's that. Then we come here in the 60s and the 70s. They wanted, when they were trying to get us, it was, you would come here and you can pretty easily get domestic, you can get your papers, you can work and your employer could sponsor you and everything was well. So people realized there was a way out of the, I can't believe an ice cream truck has decided that this is the moment that they should come and play.
That's right. This is the moment.
Yeah, so it's environmental noise, ambient noise, right? So I think I'm gonna have to close out. Oh my gosh.
Right,
Okay,
literally
all
right.
right, so done.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So,
thanks for the interlude, and now we're back.
and now we're back. Yes, thank God it kept moving. Yes. So and so then now, so we came to understand that this was a way that we could improve our families. Women could come, they can work for an employer, they can get sponsored, and they can send money back home. They can bring up the children. But
Exactly.
then they cut the pipeline. So all of a sudden, you can come, but know that you're gonna be undocumented. But what women would do is come for 6 months, go back for 6 months, come for 6 months, go back for 6 months. But then there was a point at which, if you go back, you're not sure. When they started to really squeeze the noose. If you go back, you're not sure if you're going to be able to come back. And then we have a situation with women being with being undocumented. So for me, I believe that this nanny story is, you cannot separate it from the story of Caribbean migration. Right? Like you can't. I cannot envision a world where there is that kind of story and not speak about this community. And funny enough, what strikes me is that a lot of Caribbean people whose parents say came in the 50s and 60s, who made grandma sponsored mom and who came documented. A lot of people in the Caribbean community have absolutely no idea about this.
Right.
That is one of the things that's been most shocking. Yeah,
that's been a surprising part, especially like reporting on migration, where I recognize that people had no idea that this was like the stepwise migration pattern.
right.
Of, one family member coming over and bringing the next one, and that so on, was literally how that was taking place for quite some time. But I think it just goes to show again the importance of passing on this knowledge, having these stories, telling them authentically, because then we lose another set of people who may not have not only the understanding but the appreciation for the sacrifices that have been made to make these changes or come to this country, do this work, that kind of thing. So I think that's cool.
Right. And then we have people, at least I've run into a couple of men who support, or leader. And basically, it's like saying, well, these immigrants, if they're not documented, they should go. Why did they? That same thing, espousing that same sort of doctrine. And it's like, well, how did you come? Well, I came here because my grandmother. I'm like, well, there was a pathway. There was a line back there. Now everybody's asking, well, where is the line? You're saying that standing the line. Show me the line, So I think it was important when I was writing the book to make sure that these very important, prescient issues was including, that the book was not only fictional, but it was also political, because it's a political story.
It is. And
experience.
I see that, you had a foreword in the book from Senator Kevin Parker, who really talked about, his support for legislation that had to do with the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, and support that. So when we talk about the political side of this, because often when we think about domestic workers, they're the ones who aren't necessarily included when we talk about protections for workers, whether it's things like maternity or paternity leave, or paid time off, as we've been talking about, or sick days, those kinds of things. So I think you did an excellent job of just bringing that point, or those points into it. So I think now might be a really great place for us to introduce the second special guest that we have with us this evening, to kind of talk a little bit more about that, because I know we both understand that that was a crucial point of view of the book. So I'd like to bring in Miss Christine Lewis, who is the Secretary of Domestic Workers United, advocating for nannies, elder care, and housekeepers in New York State, to talk a little bit about not only the work that she does with this organization, but how Nandi's work, although again a work of fiction, did intersect with have done and have been advocating for. So welcome, Christine.
Well, thank you.
Can you hear
Melissa.
Us?
Yes, I am. I'm hearing you. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Nandi. Nandi, I'm moved by your book. I'm moved by your story. I think the the Jewish Puerto Rican writer Aurora Levin said, our stories are our medicines. Our stories heal and provoke. And I say that to, when your daughter asks you why you always write these stories from the Caribbean, always have this Caribbean slant. It's indigenous to us. It's where we're from. We can't, you know what June Jordan said to me many years ago? I was writing poetry with the Creative Arts Center up at on 96th Street. And June Jordan said to me before she passed on, never lose your voice. Stay true to your voice. And as a nanny who was working on the Upper West Side in the early 90s, I heard those women, Melissa, talk about, this man just blow smoke in my face. This man just cussed me outside my name. And I was always the kind of person sitting on a bench trying to figure out, how could I rally these women? I mean, we're talking 1990. And I'm saying how we could corral these women that Nandi talk about, who take care of these people's prized possession and children, who creates a kinship to these children, who are like mothers, aunties, tanti, nana, nanny. The parents hate to hear you say the parents actually become an edge when they hear the kids call you mom. But it's who they know. And so you hear these stories, and Nandi captured the story in essence, in its true form, in an authentic way, right? That we are organizing. Those are those stories we are organizing around. Those stories women whose parents just say, okay, after 9 years, that's it. There is no reparation money. There is no gratuity money. There is no, well, thank you. They said to the doorman, literally, take the key from Susie. We're good storytellers, right, Nandi?
Yeah.
That's why you're right. It's so riveting. I've heard those stories. Those women say, this man just blows smoke inside of my face. What do I do, Christine? And 10 years later, there was the Domestic Workers Organization. I was doing some classes at NYU at the time. And a woman ran across the street and she said to me, Christine, you're going to make a good spokesperson for the movement. And I have been a spokesperson, an organizer with the movement, because it was also my story. How important, how profound it is. And my story became all those other stories of those women Nandi talk about who were sitting on those park benches. Because our play space was Central Park, was Columbia Park, was the East Side, was the Egyptian Park, was the Egyptian Park on 86th Street.
Right. So tell me what, so once you were able to form this organization, tell our audience just a little bit about what actually came out of that. Some historic legislation did come out of that in New York State, and why that's so critical.
So I didn't form, let me just clarify, I didn't form the organization.
Okay.
It was formed on other women who were organizing salon workers in New York. And then it morphed into domestic work.
Good.
However, we started to fight in 2003 at the city level to look at agencies. There were a wad of agencies who were promising women, newly minted women who just came to the States, work, and they were taking the women's money and promising jobs, and these women would never see the jobs. So these were the complaints we were having also, apart from the abuse. So I deemed the women who cry in the dark, the women who cry in silence. So in 2003, we looked at City Hall. Gail Brewer was a sponsor of DWU's bill, the Manhattan Borough president. She looked at the bill. It was Bill Perkins at the time, Kevin Park at the time, in City Hall, who were looking at DWU when we presented these bills. We were going all to Albany from the year 2003 to 2010, chiseling, amending, taking out. In 2010, the Bill of Rights was signed. The New York State Bill of Rights was signed into law by Governor Patterson in August of 2010, right? And it became an official law, yes. So
right.
let me just say this, a lot of nannies don't know that there's a Bill of Rights to protect them. Also, some of the employers don't know. We were very much in vogue in 2010. We were over mass tabloids. You could pull out Domestic Workers United and you'll find all types of articles and reading. I was one of the persons who spoke on the Steve Colbert report in 2011 about the Bill of Rights and workers. Yes? So we started to organize. And after this Bill of Rights was signed into law, we began to realize that other states were looking into New York at their Bill of Rights, how they could tailor theirs, yes,
So
and go after their Bill of Rights.
So New York set a precedent for other states to look at and to follow in terms of modeling a Bill of Rights for domestic workers. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it is correct. It is correct. And we understand who has been historically left out. You talk about the farm workers, two crucial groups of workers who have been left out of labor laws, the National Labor Relations Act and the Fair Labor Standard Act, who, by the way, applies to other tiers of workers, excepting domestic workers and farm workers, who have still been fighting to get theirs. Two crucial groups of workers. We understand the tiers of migration. What pushes us out? The neoliberal policies that pushes out workers from different countries to come to another country to work. By the way, migration is happening all across the board. We look at New York City as a hub for workers, yes, as a how you should say it. It's a town that needs workers, and here we stepped in to do those work that nobody else would do.
Exactly.
And you know what? It's kind of discarded and shoveled to the side. Yet the women who are sitting on those park bench is already taking care of families. Yes, making sure those children are okay, making sure the lives of the people that they work for, lives are okay. Hello. Hello.
And I have a quick question that for both of you ladies, well, two. So the first is, how did Nandi's work and her book, how did it kind of intersect some of what you were doing around that time in 2009, 2010? Because I know the book was, coming out around that time. And how did were there any intersections? Were you guys able to work together at all? And how did that actually come together?
So for me, Christine, I'm not sure I don't know if it's around Domestic Workers United, if that's when we met, or if we met before, because, our lives are parallel in terms of the arts and various things.
I know.
Yeah, but I'm thinking it was Domestic Workers United. I reached out once the book was published to the organization because I know that these were the women. It was important for me to have these women say that, yes, Nandi, this, you did a good job.
Right.
Because why it was important, because these were the women I was writing about, the women I met on the playground, the women that I hung with, the women from my family for many generations, because that's how you came. Exactly. So that was important. So I had reached out to the organization and they were like, what? There's a book about us? Come on down. So twice I went to what Christine was mentioning, to Albany with the advocacy group in the bus. And we're going, and as she mentioned, many of the women on the bus were undocumented and unbossed. They had a mission and they were going, and I think I remember the directive was just to go and knock on senators' doors. Yes. And tell them, introduce yourself, if they say that, just wait, introduce yourself and then let them know why we're here and why the bill was important. And that was an eye-opener for me, because that gave me that whole political piece that I knew that what I was writing about was important and political, but I didn't understand that organizing and advocacy aspect of it. And then there was I can't remember where we were, in the chambers or something. I've only been to Albany a couple of times. And I got to read from the book for the women during I think it was the lunchtime or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So so there has been intersection. And then, Christine is someone who I follow voraciously, whether she is acting in public theater, right? Or through this advocacy work, because what she does, she's the real deal. What she says is what she does, and it's always about the woman. It's always about, my fictional woman, but her, the real woman that actually inspired my work. So there's a lot of cross-section, a lot of intersectionality. And, I'm always, excited to see what Christine is doing and what the organization is doing, because it is important. One other point, Christine, you mentioned, when you were speaking, you mentioned about people that we take, domestic workers take care of the kids, and then if they get sick, they can't get sick days and all that kind of stuff. Yep. And I think that even when I look at what's happening today compared to when the book came out, it's even worse, because even with COVID, a domestic woman was telling me recently, she went to King's, she got the COVID, She went to Kings County Hospital, which has always been a friendly space in terms of people who don't have health insurance. And basically, she couldn't be seen because she didn't have like, it's all different now. It's not the place where people could have just automatically gone to get help and get the clinic and the sliding scale and all that. You know, there's a lot of documentation that's now involved in terms of getting the care. So I think the further we go, even though the bill got passed and there was the rise of our assets, that it's important that we keep advocating because, you know, of course, for immigration reform, that's a big one with a part of citizenship, because certainly these women, as I always say, the jobs that they're doing is jobs that American women are giving them, American people are giving them. It's American jobs. American people are hiring them to do this work. So you can't have American people hiring women to do some work and then turn around and say, oh, they're undocumented and have to leave. It's American jobs. The American woman hired them. You understand what I mean? So that the advocacy has to continue, that I hope that people would continue to support. Or if you don't know about the Domestic Workers United, that you support. They're doing a lot of good work right now, as always, in actually putting money in the pocket of women who are suffering because they can't work, COVID and all that now. You know, it's important that we keep on pushing so that, you know, they can get the health care and they can get what is needed. Because, you know, this True Nanny Diaries, as every story is a human story. And it's important that we bring the humanity into it, and these women, even especially in our community, they are not discarded and set aside as though they don't matter. So yeah, intersections for sure, and I'm a firm supporter of Christine.
Thank you, Nandi.
Thank you both. And I really appreciated that. I think our audience definitely appreciates the fact that, you know, we're bringing in the intersectionality between, you know, something that is a fictional story, but deals with the real world issues of many women in our society and from our community. And then having Christine's voice as someone who represents these women and their stories. So Christine, just one last question for you is what would you say are some of the biggest issues or concerns facing the women that you advocate for during this time of this COVID-19 pandemic? You know, we've seen a lot of stories come out about treatment by employers, or whether it be getting that time off, or being able, you're not able to necessarily, you can't work from home when you have a job like this. So what are some of the biggest concerns you would say are right now, and how can people support the work that you are doing?
So the biggest fall is joblessness among our constituency, among our community. A lot of women have been let off without pay. So what we're doing, we have Domestic Workers United host a town hall meeting every Saturday in the month. We're not going to host one on the 4th of July. It's almost an informational town hall meeting to let women know their rights in pushing back. We also have a legal clinic with pro bono lawyers who, if women could prove that they've been let off without pay, those lawyers will be able to get them their reparation money. We partnered with the mayor's office. We've partnered with the Department of Consumer Affairs to get, you know, whether it's food, whether it's health issues, around health issues, whatever it is, to get our community. Yes, so it's just being a part, following our movement, Domestic Workers United. We also are raising funds to give women, 75 women in our community, a love offering. We have also partnered with the Maple Street Garden to give women food. Women are getting food for 7 weeks. But you know what is important when all is said and done? Community. Will the circle be unbroken? If we don't find community in all that's going on, we see the pounding of the pavement, with George Floyd. What has happened to George Floyd? Who are our sons? Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. This has to be impact folks who are working employers about doing what is right. Even if the Bill of Rights is not enough, or they feel it's not enough to give your employer a sick day or time off with pay, pounding of the pavement will give some kind of enlightenment. This is what I am thinking about. But forget all of that. If we're not in community, forget it. Community, I can't stress it enough. is important. Knowing, listen, if a woman calls me on the phone and say, Christine, you know, I need this help. She's outside of the 75 women. We're getting funding, a sliver of funding. The funding is not much, but we're trying to make this funding work to give even that extra woman who calls and say, Christine, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do it. But you know what? I could go into the recesses of our staff and reach out to these women. But you know what? Community is important. You know, a lot of people, let me just say this. The Domestic Workers United has formed the National Domestic Workers Alliance, which was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 2007. How we could never forget that. We're working independently of the national, but we are chief cook and bottle washers, as we say in Trinidad, of the national. Yes? Exactly. And I am imploring them too. I'm reaching out to them as well to be able to reach into the recesses of their hearts and their pockets to give to us, to give to our women. And I believe that is attainable. But community is important, as Nandi said. The work continues. The Bill of Rights, the fight for what is left out of the Bill of Rights is important. And together, I can't do it alone. Christine can't do it alone. Everybody say Christine. But you know what? We need a circle of sisters because we're all in this together. If my neighbor house is on fire, as we say in Trinidad, wet yours. If my neighbor is hungry, it means that I am hungry. If I have access to getting the food, I have to offer the person next door. So I am my sister's keeper.
Right.
Okay?
And I think what we saw, what we've been seeing with COVID-19, it brings these issues back into the spotlight, and it shows us not only, again, how crucial the role of domestic workers is for our society and how it functions, but that there are still issues that not only have not been addressed, but need to be addressed immediately. We both thank you for your work, and we thank you for joining us in Tropicalfete on this really important conversation tonight. It was something that, you know, we appreciated you for saying that you even wanted to be a part of this conversation so that we can not only connect Nandi's story to something, to these tangible stories, but also to show that the work that was highlighted in this book are stories of women that are still going through issues these days, up until present day, and definitely need support. So we thank you.
Yes. And let me just say, if anybody wants to reach out to me, to DWU, you can reach out to DWU at dwnewyork@gmail.com. I'll repeat it again, dwnewyork@gmail.com. Okay? Thank you.
And we'll make sure that we put it in the comments, and Tropicalfete has that available too, so people can reach out to you. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Nandi. Thank you, Nandi. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Always. Okay.
You too. Blessed. Bye-bye.
So that was our audience. I think you can agree with me when we say that that was such a wonderful addition to our program this evening, just being able to see how Nandi's work definitely has intersection with what is happening real time, present day. Real life with women who are going through these experiences. So to wrap up this great conversation, we've gone through a lot of different things during this conversation, but I appreciate it because I think it not only brings into perspective, you know, kind of like your personal experience and why you wanted to write this story, or what brought this forth. As you said, it came through you, but also just bringing back the discussion of telling of stories that are authentic to our community, and that also give voice to some of the issues, unique issues that we may face when we migrate, or, you know, when we're bringing our families up, or things that, like, as you mentioned, some people just may not understand because it's not their experience, but you know that there's an audience for it. So then my last two questions for you. I would like to know, so we don't want to spoil this book, although for the people who haven't read it yet, but without spoiling the story, tell us a little bit more about what happens to Valdi as she goes on this journey. We know she comes here to go to Columbia University, but she has to babysit because she has to make money. She's she's undocumented. Give us a little bit more of a peek into her story until she reaches that has to either sink or swim.
Oh, okay. All right. So the thing with Valdi actually, when she came, she was not undocumented. She came on a scholarship of some sort, and then the oil money ran out, and they cut the scholarship, and all of a sudden she found herself basically sinking, and she decided that she was going to babysit for a little while just to get the money to go back to school. And then 1 year passed, and then 2 years passed, and a decade is lost, and 2 decades, and 20 years later, what she felt was her promise, what she came to do. She was a scholar. She was the brightest bulb in Trinidad. And that was by the wayside. She was babysitting and being taken advantage of. So basically, she had many experiences within the workplace, including having a really terrible experience with a dog because she hated dogs. That took her back to a time when she was younger. She poisoned a dog in Trinidad. One of the main things that happened was, without spoiling, is going to a fancy event and with a little boy, right? And going to the bathroom, and who could she see entering the bathroom but her sister? And meanwhile, nobody back home knows that she babysits. She said she's a journalist, and and basically freelance. And the father is always on her like, what does that mean? You're not doing anything. Your sister is the bright scholar. Your sister rang the bell for Mandela when he came to the stock exchange, all that. But seeing her sister and literally have to hide in the bathroom until she left because she was with the little boy. She has to try to keep him quiet, stand up on the toilet tank with him and crouch because she couldn't basically come out and let anybody know that she's a babysitter, because that in the minds of some of these, in Trinidad, it was a step down. Like, what is she doing? It's bad. So having to, it was for her, life was a performance in many ways. Because there was a story that was going back home that wasn't a true story. There was a story in her mind as to who she was and what she was going to be able to accomplish. And then there was the reality, and her not being able to come to terms with that reality. So, so she got to that place where, it's do or die, sink or swim. And I don't know what else I can say without.
No, you can't, because if you go any further, you're gonna give away too much. But I think that's the perfect note to kind of give people a sense of the conundrum that space Valdi and what she's going through, where she's in between these realities, what she thought she was gonna have, what she has, and where she's telling people that she has and she doesn't. And then also those broken dreams, or those dreams that are kind of like pushed to the side at this point in time because you're not moving through in the way that you want. But if you were to say, what are 3 takeaways that you think people can get from this story? I know mine, but I'd like you to share yours first.
You said 3. One of the main things, I think it's the new universality of dreams being lost, and that we need to move on time, and we need to know when to step off a trajectory if it's not working, because sometimes we're so committed to what we're doing, even though we know it's the wrong thing for us, right? But you're so fearful to make to go in a different direction that 20 years later, you find yourself in the same place. And I think that, to me, that is true whether you came to be a big scholar and ended up babysitting for 20 years, which is not what you wanted to do. You don't even like kids. You understand what I mean? But you're babysitting for 20 years. So it's like to move on time. As human beings, we need to move on time. And I'm talking to people, but I'm talking to myself. You need to move on time. You need to not procrastinate.
It's a reminder to all of us.
Yeah. Sway to the left or sway to the right, but be on task and be on purpose. And if you're not comfortable with where the road is going to be to be able to tell yourself, it's okay to take a different direction. You understand? The other thing too is, number 2 would be not being committed to how it will look. Many times we're so committed to how it will look, so that there may be people who, like Valdi, for example, was undocumented for so long. but she never told anyone because she was afraid of being judged. She was afraid of so many, and and then if back home they knew, then how would that look? What would they think of her? So basically, if somebody was there who could help her, they had no idea what she needed because she never said what was wrong.
Right. So we talk about community, right? The importance of community in that moment, as Christine was saying earlier, and you were as well, feeling like you have that community that you can turn to and go to when you're having these issues, and know that you have somebody there that can help advocate for you.
Yeah, and I think the third thing would be about taking yourself too seriously. Because I think she was so caught up in the story that she couldn't even ever really relax and enjoy the blessing that was right around her, even the blessing of community. Because even in the excerpt that I read, you would see that she was up there to make the bread, but she's whining about this and whining about that. So that, to be able to understand that life is a journey, and there's a old a hymn, old, I guess, spiritual Baptist hymn that it says, we must walk this pilgrim journey, we must walk it by ourselves, nobody else can walk it for me, I must walk it by myself. That to understand that life is a journey that you're walking. And okay, she was undocumented, but being undocumented is a thing, it's a state, and somebody has to experience it. So why not Valdi? And what is she going to do about it instead of being caught up in the state?
Right.
How do you move past?
Move forward, move past it. Got it.
Right. Yeah. So I think to me that would be what I think would be like universal themes that people can take away, irrespective of whether beyond the story of
or what your reality background is. I think I'll add one to that. I think one thing, because I thought about dreams lost or dreams deferred, but I also thought a lot about sacrifice, just how much someone is willing to go through or kind of put their own life on hold so that they can try to make another dream take place. So I thought a lot about the sacrifices that people make, not only for themselves, but their families when it comes to being a domestic worker or just working maybe in a space that you may not have anticipated in order to hopefully in order to get to those dreams one day, hopefully. So that's what it made me think about a lot. And then also to take a step back and think about the sacrifices that my own parents and grandparents made when you live and you grow and you work hard and you're in this position, and then you come to a new country and you're starting from scratch. Essentially. So it made me think about that a lot, and just to continuously be grateful for the sacrifices that those who have come before us have made in order for us to be here. And a lot of times sacrifices made that deferred their own dreams. So I think there's a lot we can take away from this conversation. Our audience, I'd like to know if you have any questions for Nandi, Jacob. We've been asking your questions throughout. We see Tropicalfete has put up, please definitely log on and support tropicalfete.com. I had the opportunity to spend a Saturday with this talented group of amazing musicians and stilt walkers and singers and dancers and that kind of thing. And I can tell you firsthand that this is how we keep Caribbean culture alive, by ensuring that we teach it to our children, that they are involved, that they are invested, and that they are just as passionate from seeing how important it is to all of us. We also have the link to Amazon, where you can, go and purchase the True Nanny Diaries by Nandi Jacob, and also information for how you can reach Christine Lewis of Domestic Workers United to support the efforts of domestic workers. So I want to just take a look. So we do have another question, and that's just about your current one of your current works. We know that you do books, you do plays. So we want to talk a little bit about Green Card, A Love Story. I understand that this is a YouTube series tell us, give us the synopsis, a little bit about what this is and how people can check this out.
Okay, so so first I'll say you go to Green Card, A Love Story on YouTube. And I'm also going to say is before you even start watching it, please hit subscribe. And then you can start watching. Right, yeah. Go to Green Card, A Love Story, hit subscribe, then start watching. So basically, Green Card, once again, you know, these Caribbean themes, this whole theme of being undocumented, trying to go through, you know, it permeates a certain aspect of my work. And Green Card, A Love Story, as the title suggests, is one of those. So basically, we have Petra, who is here, bright, brilliant, she's like about 30, you know, getting ready to, you know, take on the world, but she's undocumented. And she, the guy she's been with for 6 years, they're about to get married, but he thinks that he's going to be the next soca star. So he's the next Marshall Montano or Kesso, you understand, Farmer Nappy. So
whoever's your favorite. I said, you can take your pick. Whoever's your favorite.
Yeah, the best, any soca artist that you think is the best one, he thinks that, you know, he is next, like he's convinced of it. So basically, in the meantime, he is singing on the train, on the number 4 train. And she has a best friend who is African American, who is explaining to her that singing on the number 4 train is not a career, but she is hell-bent on this is the guy or whatever. But, you know, like there's always this little niggling that, you know, maybe this is not it. So she goes through a few experiences herself in terms of trying to navigate this situation of being, again, undocumented in America and wanting to, you know, be married. And there's also the question, I mean, like, does she really love him or does she just want these papers? And does he really love her, or does he like the fact that this woman is taking care of him? You know, so she has about 3 jobs. She works for an old lady, taking care of a senior citizen. She sells soup on Flatbush, right? Okay. Yeah. She sells soup like on the side, and she does something else. I can't even remember. She does like I know what the other thing she does. But I don't think we showed that yet. She actually collects bottles, and you see her putting the bottles in the little slots and stuff. You know what I mean? So again, the story, the story. Whatever, is gonna put some money in the bag, you know. So so that's, and it's a comedy in addition to being, you know, a real serious story about, you know, the woman Petra. And this actually came from a play I did called Mother-in-Law, which was a big raucous, comedy, and but just fleshing it out some more with giving the characters actual storylines in terms of navigating life in America. Right. You know, I love immigrant stories. I love, showing the challenges, but most of all, I love showing the joy, because somewhere inside there, even with the True Nanny Diaries, and when they're making the bread and when they're hanging by the statue, when they party on the weekend, yeah, there's the joy. We find the joy, and that's who we are, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I see we have the episodes going up there, so people can check out episodes 1 through 3 of Green Card, A Love Story on YouTube. Like we said, you go, you type that in, you hit subscribe, right. Then you watch.
and then you share.
Yes, of course, right? Social media. So I would like to thank you so much for sharing your book with us today, True Nanny Diaries, talking to us a little bit about Green Card, A Love Story, but also more importantly, talking about the intersection of your work and how it intersects what's happening and reflects the stories of the Caribbean community. And we all appreciate you and applaud you, because as we've been saying, it's imperative that we tell authentic stories so that it can reach the community it's supposed to reach, and so that we can see ourselves. So we celebrate you this Caribbean American Heritage Month. I'm sorry we can't be in person, so hopefully next year.
I know, hopefully it all changes. And I want to thank you, Melissa. Thank you for being such a awesome interviewer. You know, it takes a little while to pull me up because I'm a big
My
mug.
pleasure.
I know it's a very strange thing. But I also want to shout out all this love I'm getting in my Facebook watch. You know, all my friends and my sister friends and my brother friends, and you know, the community is really in here. I love you guys. Thank you so very much. Some of them have my book and they're saying that they really enjoyed it. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this forum, Tropicalfete Alton. Thank you so very much. You know, it's an amazing organization and another organization like so truly worthy of your support. So when it's those days, what do you call it? Giving Tuesday and stuff. Just remember the artists in the community, the organizations that doing the work, Domestic Workers United. I think it's important, especially with Domestic Workers United. If we remember Domestic Workers United, we will give because we remember from whence we came. Tropicalfete, we will give because we know where we're going. So I'm grateful for the community. I'm grateful for you. And we press on. It's hard times right now for everybody with this COVID, but I know that if we're together, if we're united, we are gonna survive it. We're gonna go forward, and our culture will be stronger than ever.
Definitely. And I look forward to us being able to have that gathering, like you talked about, being able to come together in community and see a flambeau or see a Greek love story.
Yeah, we will do it again.
Like
the time will come.
When I saw it a couple of years ago, and to, like as we said, continue to support the arts, creative arts in these spaces, our authors, our musicians, our performers, especially right now. And I just want to, I see a comment popping up on the screen from Eileen, who says, thank you so much for connecting Nandy's story to the struggle as it continues for Domestic Workers United women. And she also posted the link to the ongoing emergency fund. And this is something that I know Tropicalfete will share. I will share. We all will make sure we share on our platforms, and 100% of the money raised in this fund goes to women hardest hit by this pandemic, who've lost work and need assistance in making ends meet. So we really thank Eileen for that comment. And we just appreciate everyone who's tuned in. And I think we just see the importance of not only our community, but that interconnectivity and the importance of why telling these authentic stories, no matter, like, you could write the book, you could have written this book 50 years ago and it would still have relevance to this day. So I think that just goes back to saying, when you tell that authentic story, it resonates with people through and through, and it definitely can help people through and through as they go through their different experiences. So I want to thank everyone that is watching right now. Thank you, Alton. Thank you to all of the Tropicalfete Inc. instructors, the ones I've gotten a chance to play steel pan with or get up on the stilts with, the students, the wonderful artists who literally got me on stilts in like 5 minutes, and I really thought it was not possible. But thank you for creating this platform, this forum. I think that this was a way that we were able to stay connected throughout these difficult times, but also not only to recognize, not that we didn't recognize before, but I think we have an even greater appreciation for the arts and for what that means in our community. So we thank Tropicalfete. I hope everyone, and so Nandi, thank you so much. And
thank you, Melissa.
We have to do this again, but I hope we can be in person soon.
Yeah. And thank you again, Christine. You really brought it home in terms of making those connections. So yeah.
Definitely. Thank you all. Please enjoy your night. And this was wonderful. Thank you. So good night, everyone.
Night.